Hey everybody, I'm Reda with Future Pastimes, one of the designers on the expansions for the Dune board game. In this video, I'm actually going to be talking about one of the base factions. So we're going to talk about House Atreides. This faction's been around since 1979 when the game was first published by Avalon Hill. The 2019 edition is published by Gale Force 9 and has 2 expansions for it now that add multiple other factions and additional variants as well. But let's talk about House Atreides. So first we'll take a look at their leaders. So they've got Dr. Yui, who is a 1-strength leader. You've got Duncan Idaho, 2-strength leader. And again, the 2 doesn't necessarily talk about his battle prowess. As we all know, he's greatest swordsman in the galaxy, or whatever the case may be. But it's also your leadership, your ability to lead other forces. And, Duncan Idaho is kind of a lone wolf. You've got Gurney Halleck is a 4-strength leader. And then Atreides has 2 5-strength leaders, Thufir Hawat and Lady Jessica. So all in all, a pretty decent spread. More than half of their leaders are 4 or higher, so that's pretty good. The Atreides faction has 3 advantages in basic. Everything fits on one side of the faction sheet, so bully for them. And all of their advantages in the basic game revolve around the concept of prescience. And that was Paul's ability to be able to see multiple possible futures and try to narrow it down to the most likely future that was going to happen. So you're making tactical decisions with information and knowledge that the other players don't have. So that manifests in a couple of ways. First is that during the bidding phase of each round, you're going to get to see each card that comes up for auction before the bidding begins on it. So you're not looking at all of the cards all at once. It's one at a time. So you'll take the first card, you'll look at it, and then the players will bid on it. And you will know what that card is. You'll know who gets it. And you'll know whether or not you want to bid spice on it. You can start the game with 10 spice. You also start the game with 10 of your forces already on the board in Arakeen. And Arakeen is a pretty good location to be in. It's one of the 2 cities. So it has an income in the advanced game of 2 spice that you get in the spice collection phase. You also get an increased collection rate when you're collecting spice from a spice blow. So instead of 2 spice per force, it's 3 spice. And you have the ornithopters so that when you move, if you've started your shipping and movement action with forces in Arakeen, then your movement rate is 3 territories rather than just 1. So the 10 spice that you've got a better job of managing that spice than the other factions, because you know when it's good to bid high for a card. So you're like, oh, the laser gun, I got to make sure that I get that, or nobody else does, or whoever does get it is spending a lot of spice for it. And technically, it says on the sheet that Atreides is the only faction that's actually allowed to keep written notes on the treachery cards that the players get. Now, the FAQ does kind of loosen that up a little bit, because certain knowledge is going to be out there for everyone. Once another faction reveals that they've got a shield and they win a battle and they're going to keep that card, everybody knows they have a shield. Although technically Atreides is the only one that's supposed to be writing that information down and keeping notes about who has what. Certainly in tournament play, you can expect that Atreides will still be the only one allowed to keep written notes, even if there's information that has become publicly available. You just have to remember that, the Harkonnen have a shield, and the Emperor has a snooper, and the Guild have la la la, or whatever the case may be. So expect that, but it's technically the FAQ does loosen it up a little. Once it's known to the table, everyone can kind of keep track of that information. I tend to play more of the tournament approach, where only the Atreides writes it down. And even when I'm Atreides, I don't always write it down. I'm like, you know what? I think I can keep track of that. But their second advantage is their movement advantage, and it's really, again, it's knowledge. So they get to look at the top card of the spice deck, and that's right at the beginning of the shipping and movement. It says technically before anybody moves, but you can look at it whenever you want. It's fairly limited information, and this is one of the advantages that actually a lot of people who play Atreides forget to do. They're like, oh, oops, yeah, I guess I get to look at that. But it is useful for a couple of reasons. If it's a spice territory, then you know that that's where the spice blow is going to be in the next turn. And it's important to note that if you're playing advanced, there's going to be 2 spice cards that are revealed, but Atreides only gets to see the first one. So they'll know where that first spice blow is going to be. And you can use that information to move your forces there ahead of time, you're very unlikely to have to battle anybody in a territory that doesn't yet have any spice. So it can be useful because in the next turn, you may not want to use your movement to move to the spice blow. And if you're already there, then you've got that movement to do something else like prevent a win or go to another area of the board that has spice that maybe wasn't collected in a previous turn, or to go for the win or do whatever you want to do. The other information that can be useful sometimes when you're looking at that card is whether or not it's going to be a sandworm. And that's, of course, to know if the last territory has your forces. You don't want to be there because you're going to be devoured by the sandworm. But you're also going to know that there's going to be a nexus in the next turn. So knowing that that nexus will occur, you may want to make some decisions based on that. You may not want to get into a battle with somebody that you anticipate you'll want to be in an alliance with. So that can be useful information. And sometimes it's pretty common for the Atreides to give, to sort of trade the information about the next spice card that's going to be revealed with the Fremen, who will know in the advanced game anyway how far the storm is going to move. That's a pretty common trade. It's a little deal that you can make. And in terms of deal, let me back it up too, and talking about the bidding phase. If you're playing an advanced game, or if you're playing in basic and you're not going to follow the now FAQ suggestion of not using bribes and that element of deal making in basic, we tend to allow it. But then again, I mostly play advanced anyway. When I'm Atreides, I like to sell some information about the cards that are going to be up for auction. You can one common thing I'll do is I'll say, look, for 2 spice. A 2 spice bribe from each player, you can see all the cards that are up. Because a lot of times the players will take you up on that, and that can be, 10 spice that you make in that turn. Or you can say, look, for a couple of spice, you can see some of the cards. For 1 spice, you can see any 1 card. Or for 2 spice, any 1 card. Or for 2 spice, the first 3 cards, or the last 3, or whatever you want. You can play around with that, see what you can get out of people, especially early in the game when they have spice. But also later on when people have gained spice and they're a little bit more desperate about who has what. So keep that in mind. It's a great way to earn spice. The last advantage that they have is their battle advantage. And that is where they get to see one part of their opponent's battle plan. And that is one of 4 things. It's going to be the weapon that their opponent is going to play, the defense that their opponent is going to play, the leader that they're going to play, or the number they're planning to dial. And don't discount the number, because that sometimes is the most insidious question to ask, because now they're like, oh, God, now I got to really think about what am I going to dial? What do I think I'm going to do in there? But with the Atreides, because you have that prescience, if you happen to have both types of defense, for example, you've got a shield and a snooper, it's great to ask what weapon they're going to play, because now you know which defense to use to counter it and pretty much guarantee that your leader is going to survive that battle. Conversely, if you have 2 different types of weapons, you've got a poison weapon and a projectile weapon, you can ask what their defense is so that, again, you're pretty much guaranteed to be able to kill their leader. And then you can look at, well, what's their maximum dial on their forces? If they're able to full dial, can you beat that with your dial and your leader? In a case where you know that your leader is going to survive, you just got to calculate their strongest leader plus their maximum dial to know what it would take for you to guarantee a win. When you're definitely going to kill their leader, you got to take into account they may have the weapon that can kill your leader. So it really is going to boil down to that number dialed. So get a nice strong stack of forces when you go in there, but that's true for everybody. In an alliance with the Atreides, Atreides can also grant you the battle advantage of seeing one part of the battle plan. So that is a really attractive element for Atreides as an ally. In terms of the advanced advantage, they have one advanced advantage, and that is their Kwisatz Haderach. And what that means is they're going to have this little tracker card here with a little token that has that symbol on it, and you're keeping track of how many of your forces you are losing in battle. And it has to be in battle. If you lose those forces to the sandworm or to the storm, it doesn't count. But when you lose forces in a battle, you're keeping track of that until you hit that threshold of 7. Once you do, then you have unlocked the Kwisatz Haderach token. And in our games, when that happens, we like to loudly proclaim, "Father, the sleeper has awakened." That's for you to decide if you're nerdy enough to do it, but we certainly are. Having the Kwisatz Haderach token is very useful because in one battle per turn, you can include this in your battle plan, and it will increase the strength of your leader by 2. So now Jessica is a 7th strength leader, but it also gives this leader immunity from being called as a traitor. So you're in a battle with the Harkonnen, and they have selected Jessica as one of their 4 traitor cards, but you have the Kwisatz Haderach in that battle. They cannot call her a traitor in that battle. So it's very handy. If the leader is killed, the Kwisatz Haderach token just goes back to you. It can only be killed if you're in a a laser gun shield explosion. And then you're losing everything. You're losing your treachery cards, your leader is dead, your forces are all dead. And the Kwisatz Haderach token also goes to the Tleilaxu tanks. It can be revived, though, just like a leader, so you would spend your 2 spice to get it out. And the Kwisatz Haderach token, alive or dead, does not have any bearing on the normal rules for reviving your leaders. So normally you have to wait until they're all dead, and then you can revive them one at a time each turn. And if a leader is killed for a second time, they're put face down in the tanks, and you can't revive them until all of your leaders have been killed for a second time. But the Kwisatz Haderach ignores all of that. So the strength of the Atreides is taking advantage of your prescience. That, by and large, is the best way to win with Atreides. You know who has the good cards, so you know who you should get into a fight with. There's always going to be some stuff that you don't know. You don't know what everyone's starting treachery card is, or for the Harkonnen are, since they get 2 to start off with. But you will pick up some of that information as the game goes on, especially if you're keeping tight records about what everyone has and what they're buying and how much they're spending on it, so that you know that how much spice they have left with which to spice style. And that's only in advanced. So the other thing is that sometimes it's worthwhile to get into a couple of fights early on just to get that Kwisatz Haderach. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll move some of my forces from Arrakeen into the Polar Sink, because they can get there with the Thopters. So the Polar Sink is a safe place to keep forces until you're ready to make your move or do whatever. But keeping control of Arrakeen is always a good idea. You get the Thopters, the better collection, you get the 2 spice income in advanced. So sometimes it's worth it just to dial high, sacrifice 7 of your forces just to be able to unlock your Kwisatz Haderach, but also to maintain control of that territory. And it's a little bit of a bookkeeping faction, but if you're all right with that, it is good to be able to make tactical decisions because you have more knowledge of the goings-ons in the game than anybody else. So that's Atreides. Let me know what you think of Atreides, and I'll be talking about the other factions in other videos. So thanks for watching.